Hello everyone, I'm Sandeep Matthias and I will be presenting our survey paper on using gaze behavior for natural language processing. This is the outline of the talk today. First, I will discuss the motivation for eye tracking as well as some eye tracking terms. Next, I will describe some basic gaze behavior corpora based on different languages and different tasks. Then I will describe the motivation for learning gaze behavior as well as how gaze behavior is learned for solving some NLP tasks. Next, I will mention a few further applications of learning gaze behavior and conclude the talk with some concluding remarks. Eye tracking is a means of using cognitive information for solving different language processing and understanding tasks. Eye tracking research is based on the eye mind hypothesis. This hypothesis states that there is no appreciable lag between what is fixated and what is processed. In other words, whatever the eye sees, that is what the mind is processing. Gaze behavior is a way to personalize an NLP system for solving different NLP tasks using cognitive information in the form of eye tracking. For example, we have here sarcasm understandability. In this slide, we see a reader read the text. Understanding sarcasm is very easy. As the reader reads the text, his gaze behavior pattern is recorded, and using the recorded gaze behavior pattern, we decide whether or not the reader has understood the sarcasm present in the text. This slide covers some of the basic terms used in eye tracking. The first term is an interest area. An interest area is the area of the screen which is of interest to us. For example, in NLP, it is generally words and the space around those words. In this example, interest areas are shown in the light yellow boxes. Fixations are events where the eye is focused on a part of the screen. Here, the fixations are shown in the light blue circles. The third eye tracking term is a saccade. A saccade is the movement of the eye from one fixation point to the next. There are two types of saccades, a regression and a progression. A progression is a saccade from the current interest area to a later one, and a regression is a saccade from the current interest area to an earlier one. The saccades seen here in this slide are shown in dark yellow arrows. This slide covers some of the basic data sets available for gaze behavior in languages other than English, namely Chinese, Dutch, French, German, Russian, Persian, Spanish, etc. Gaze behavior has also been collected for solving multiple tasks like sentiment analysis, sarcasm understandability, which we described earlier, co-reference resolution, reading complexity, and text quality prediction. The main motivation for learning gaze behavior is that recording gaze behavior at runtime is costly in terms of time and money. Firstly, you have to pay the annotators, then you must supervise the annotators while the experiment is run. It also takes time to calibrate and validate the eye tracker for recording the gaze behavior. And once the experiment is completed, noise must also be cleaned up after recording the gaze data, and so on. As a solution to these problems, an approach is to learn the gaze behavior. There are two approaches which we discussed in our paper. The first is type aggregation. Here, for a given token, the value of its gaze behavior feature is a mean or aggregate value of the feature for that token across the eye tracking corpus. The second is multitask learning, where we learn gaze behavior features as an auxiliary task while we solve the given NLP problem as the primary task. One challenge that must be noted is that readers read at different speeds. Therefore, gaze data has to be normalized. There are two approaches for normalization. The first is min-max normalization, where for a given reader we normalize the feature values of each feature to a range of 0 to 1. The second is binning, where we assign the feature value of a given gaze feature to a given bin. Now we will describe learning gaze behavior for different NLP tasks. The first task that we describe is predicting fixations while reading. In 2009, Nielsen and Nivre used a transition based approach to predict the next fixation using features like token length, token frequency, next token length, etc. In 2013, Mathis and Sogard used a linear conditional random field model to predict the next fixation using features like word length and word probability. In this example seen here, I'll always cherish the original misconception I had of you. The fixations and saccades would be as follows. First, the reader fixates on I'll, then they'll have a saccade to cherish, skipping the word always. Then they'll regress back to I'll, then go to the word the, then of, then had, original misconception, and finally you to end the sentence. The next task is predicting grammatical functions. In 2015, Barrett and Sogard used gaze features to predict grammatical functions. These gaze features were learned as type aggregators from the Dundee corpus. This is an example here showing for the given sentence Texans get reasonable car rental insurance. The dependency parts as well as the average fixation durations per word from the paper. The next task which we describe is text simplification, in particular sentence compression. In 2016, Clerk et al. Used gaze behavior to learn to simplify text by compressing sentences. In that approach, they used multitask learning, learning the first fixation duration and regression durations as auxiliary tasks and compressing the sentence as the primary task using bidirectional LSTMs. For example, if the input sentence is Intel would be building car batteries, expanding its business model beyond its core strength, the company said in a statement. An output sentence would be Intel would be expanding its business model beyond its core strength. The next task that we describe is part of speech tagging. In 2016, Barrett et al. Published a couple of papers where they used gaze behavior to solve POS tagging. They use type aggregations from the Dundee corpus in a monolingual and cross-lingual setting with the help of a hidden Markov model. For the system, they use a variety of features, which they classified as basic gaze features, for example, dwell time, early gaze features, for example, first fixation duration, late gaze features, for example, regression to duration for a particular word, context gaze features, for example, fixation probability of nearby words, and textual features like word length, corpus frequency of the word, etc. The next task that we discuss is readability. In 2018, Gonzalez, Garduño, and Sogard used a multitask learning approach with a multi-layer perceptron where they learned gaze behavior as an auxiliary task to improve the prediction of readability. They learned gaze behavior features from the Dundee corpus as well as the Ghent eye tracking corpus. The next task we discuss is sentiment analysis. In 2018, Mishra et al. Published a work at IIIAI where they performed sentiment analysis. As part of their work, they learned pause tagging as well as gaze behavior as auxiliary tasks at runtime. In 2018, Barrett et al. Described a multitask learning approach to solve sentiment analysis, grammatical error detection, and hate speech detection. All three tasks were viewed as sequence classification problems in their paper, where they would classify the sentence. For example, in the case of sentiment analysis, they would classify the sentence as either positive, negative, or neutral. In their approach, they use an attention based system where the attention was in the form of gaze behavior. This gaze behavior itself was learned at runtime as an auxiliary task. The system learns the gaze behavior at the token level and the appropriate task label at the sentence level. The final task, which we describe in our paper, is named entity recognition. In 2019 at NACL, Hollenstein and Zhang used a BiLSTM encoder with a CRF layer to perform named entity recognition. They use word embeddings, which they concatenate to character embeddings, as well as 17 gaze features. These 17 gaze features are the basic, early, late, and context gaze features which were used by Barrett et al. In 2016. These features were type aggregated from the Dundee corpus, the Zuko corpus, and the Gecko corpus. In addition to the earlier applications, we also proposed a couple of other applications where gaze behavior could be learned. The first of them is complex word identification, and the second is automatic essay grading. After our submission at IJCAI in February last year, we were able to also publish a paper where we learned gaze behavior for automatic essay grading. Complex word identification is the problem of identifying whether a word or phrase is complex in a given context. It is a very important subtask for the overall task of lexical simplification. Currently, in literature, gaze behavior has been done on quantifying complexity. For example, at ACL in 2013, there was a work published by Mishra et al. On translation annotation complexity. In 2014 at ACL, there was a work by Joshi et al. On sentiment annotation complexity, and at AAAI 2017, there was a work by Mishra et al. On scan path complexity for reading. However, to the best of our knowledge, no work has been done on learning gaze behavior for the task of complex word identification. Automatic essay grading is the process of scoring a text which is written in response to a topic called the essay prompt. At ACL in 2018, we had showed that gaze behavior can help in predicting the quality rating of a text which is assigned by a reader. More recently, in 2020, we published a paper which showed a solution to automatic essay grading, where gaze behavior is learned as an auxiliary task. In conclusion, gaze behavior has been shown to aid in solving multiple NLP tasks. However, correcting gaze behavior at runtime is not a feasible endeavor. In order to use gaze behavior, we therefore utilize different approaches such as multitask learning, using type aggregated values, etc., from existing gaze behavior corpora. Gaze behavior has been learned for solving multiple NLP tasks such as part of speech tagging, sentence compression, named entity recognition, sentiment analysis, automatic essay grading, etc. Gaze behavior learning has also been shown to improve the performance of systems in all of these studies. Thank you. Any questions?